Pure water, baby. Okay. 2 warnings. If you're a follower of mine, a listener of mine, a viewer of mine who is a combination of intelligent, objective, and perceptive, don't watch this video. It's rare when I tell my listeners and viewers, don't watch this video. But if you consider yourself a man who's intelligent, objective-minded, and highly perceptive, don't watch this video. Mainly because it's just going to be kind of repetitive of stuff that I've covered starting with April of 2017. Second warning. As my good brother, Tony Maceo, as you know, he always teases me. Anytime I say something that's somewhat boastful or egotistical or narcissistic or just generally tooting my horn, he calls that me rubbing my balls in men's faces. I'm going to do at least a minor degree of ball rubbing in this video. I'm going to do at least a minor degree of ball rubbing in this video. This video, as I always start off saying, it should be short. I can't guarantee that, but it should be 30 minutes or less. Here's what I want to quickly address. Is this notion that primarily ignorant people say. Ignorant, yeah, I said it. Ignorant people. Ignorant, uneducated, ignorant type motherfuckers say. As it relates to men giving other men dating advice. People like pickup artists, dating coaches, relationship experts, anybody who's in the business of giving dating advice to men. From time to time, not always, but from time to time, I will read, again, ignorant people make this comment, well, man, the game is the game is the game. Ain't nothing new under the sun, man. The game been around for centuries, man. Ain't nothing new about the game. The game is the game is the game. Insert dog face here. That's a stupid statement. That's a stupid statement. And anybody who repeats that stupid, tell them Alan Roger Currie called him stupid. Okay? Tell them that. Use my name. Anybody who says that publicly, tell them Alan Roger Currie says you stupid. You're ignorant. Quote me on that shit. The game is the game is the game, man. Ain't nothing that one dating coach can say that another dating coach ain't already said, man. All this stuff is just the same information, man. It's been around for decades, if not centuries, man. The game is the game is the game is the game. Yeah, you a stupid motherfucker for saying some stupid shit like that. And if you didn't say it and one of your friends did, tell them Alan Roger Currie called him a stupid, ignorant ass motherfucker. Did Steve Jobs invent computers? Did Steve Jobs invent computers? Did Steve Jobs invent the smartphone? Did Bill Gates invent computers? Did Bill Gates, was he the first person to invent computer software? Did Bill Walsh invent the game of NFL football? Did Bill Belichick invent the game of NFL football? Did Phil Jackson invent the game of NBA basketball? Did Steven Spielberg invent filmmaking? You get my point? Huh? Okay, my phone is getting on my nerves. It's getting on my nerves. Here goes my webcam again. Acting up. Falling down. See, all those guys I mentioned, they were what's known as innovators. They were what's known as innovators. When you're an innovator, what that means is that you are not the inventor of a product, a service, a concept, or a technological item, or a process. You are not the inventor of it, but you added some new wrinkle to something that already existed. You added some new wrinkle to something that already existed. That's what an innovator is. That's what an innovator is. For somebody to say that all dating advice for men is essentially the same thing, spoken in different words, is ignorant. It's ignorant. You know what that's similar to saying? That's similar to saying that all diet advice is essentially the same thing. That's what that's like saying. That's like saying that all diet books are essentially saying the same thing, only using slightly different words. If you were to tell somebody that in public, they would look at you like you're a fucking idiot. And you would deserve to be looked at as a fucking idiot. Because the only commonality between all diet advice books is that they're designed to help men and women lose weight. That's about the only commonality between all diet books, is their ultimate objective. Their ultimate objective, which is to help men and women lose weight. That's the one commonality you can say that exists of all diet books, is their ultimate objective. But in terms of the process that each diet book author is recommending that you employ in order to lose weight, is totally different. I can give one example. There's a guy named Robert Atkins. He's known for creating what's known as the Atkins diet. Do you know when Robert Atkins first wrote his first book in 1969, and he wrote a couple of updated versions, I think in 1972 and 1973 and 1974, man, people thought he was crazy. People thought he was crazy. Why? Because his recommendation for losing weight was to eat as much fat as possible. And of course, most people were like, what? How can you lose fat by eating fat? That makes no sense. People literally called him a loon. Some people thought Robert Atkins was a crazy loon when he first came out with his book. Do you know his book was out for about 25 years? The Atkins Revolution diet was out for about 25 years before it first became popular. People didn't really start talking about low carbohydrate diets until about the mid-1990s. Until about the mid-1990s. That's when people first start really taking a look at low carb diets. Before that, people thought that the idea of a low carb diet was crazy. I remember myself, I discovered the Atkins diet in summer of 1992. And speaking of thinking you crazy, some of my own close friends, including my own older brother, he thought I was crazy. When he saw me doing first doing the Atkins diet, he thought I was crazy, man. He was like, so wait a minute, you trying to lose weight, but you eating a double cheeseburger? Yeah, right. Okay. It wasn't until he saw me lose something like 20 pounds in 3 weeks where he was like, damn, so that shit works. I said, hell yeah, it works. He was like, I'll be damned. Yeah. In summer 1992, I was preparing for a wedding and I lost 20 pounds. I went from approximately 183 to 163 in about 3 weeks using the Atkins diet. Now, I will say the downside of a low-carb diet is once you start eating carbs again, your weight comes right back. That's the downside of the low-carb diet. It's just like the low-fat diet. If you go on a low-fat diet, the minute you start eating fat again, the weight's going to come right back. But if you were to look at all diet books, though, they all have different specific. For starters, there's at least 3 types of diets you can go on. That's minimum. Minimum, there's at least 3 types of diets you can go on. You can go on a low carb, just a general low calorie diet, a low fat diet, or a low carb diet. So that right there nullifies the belief that all diet books are the same. How could they be the same if there's 3 general methods that you can lose weight on, which is low calorie, low fat, and low carb? And then within each of those categories, there's probably about literally dozens of different types of low calorie diets. There's dozens of different types of low fat diets, and there's dozens of different types of low carb diets. Like I know just with low carb alone, there's I think the Atkins diet I already mentioned. There's what's known as the South Beach diet. There's I think it's called the Plato diet, the keto diet. Just Google top 10 low carb diets or something to that effect. And you'll see there's different types of low carb diets. Like I know for specifically, like the Atkins diet is much different than the South Beach diet, even though they're both low carb diets. Like the South Beach diet allows you to eat more vegetables and more fruits than the Atkins diet does. So again, my main point is, when it comes to evaluating diet advice books, all of them have the same ultimate objective, which is to help men and women lose weight. But if someone's to say all diet advice is essentially the same, that would be an ignorant and invalid comment. It's the same with dating advice. It's the same with dating advice. For someone to say that all dating advice is essentially the same, again, is ignorant, because I pointed out in my Negro Manosphere article just last Monday. I pointed out, number one, there's at least 5 different methods for getting women in bed. Now, just like the diet books, where I would say the ultimate objective is to help men and women lose weight, the ultimate objective of just about all men's dating advice is to help them find a sex partner. That's the ultimate objective of just about all dating advice for men, is to help them find a female sex partner. Well, I guess if they're homosexual, to help them find a male sex partner, but to help them find a sex partner. But that's about it. That's the only commonality of all of men's dating advice for other men, is to help them find a sex partner. But when you evaluate the way they're recommending going about that, the way each dating coach is recommending going about that is totally different. I can tell you, and now this is where I'm going to do my ball rubbing, ain't no dating coach in the manosphere just like me. Ain't no dating coach in the manosphere that's just like me, who gives advice that somebody can say is just like mine. The only way somebody would be able to say that somebody else's advice is just like mine is if that motherfucker's copying my shit. Real talk. I challenge anybody. If somebody says all dating advice, to say, name somebody who came out with a book before mine. Name somebody who came out with a book before mine that somebody can legitimately say, Alan Roger Currie, you giving advice that's just like so-and-so. Name somebody. I invite you to. Name somebody who came out with a book before my book. My first book, Mode 1. The first copyrighted version, Mode 1, is in 1998. So, name somebody that came out with a book prior to 1998 that somebody can say, hey, Alan Magic, I read your book, Mode 1, man. And your book, your advice in your book is just like so-and-so. I challenge you and invite you to name somebody that you would be able to directly compare me to. I'm not talking about just one aspect here of my advice or one aspect here of my advice that might be similar to some other pimp, player, dating coach. I'm talking about my advice in its totality. In its totality. Name somebody that wrote a book before me that you can legitimately say, Alan Roger Currie, I read your 1999 Mode 1 ebook, and I have to tell you, it was a good read, but it's just like so-and-so's book. I want you to name the person, the name of the book, and the year that book was copyrighted. If you're going to give me a name, I want you to name the author, the title of his book, and the year his book was copyrighted. I will guarantee you with 99.99999% certainty, you ain't going to find nobody who wrote a book before mine that was just like mine. Again, it might have one similarity here or one similarity there, but as far as a book that's just like mine in its totality, you ain't going to find a book that's just like mine. Any of my books. That goes for Mode 1. That goes for Ooh, Say It Again. That goes for The Possibility of Sex. And that goes for The Beta Male Revolution. So again, going back to my article that I just wrote last Monday, that I published last Monday, the first thing that separates dating coaches would be those 5 different methods of getting a woman in bed I talked about in that article, which is attraction, seduction, which includes both verbal and nonverbal seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, transactional sex, or what I refer to as negotiation, which includes tricking and whining and dining, and then coercion. So the first thing you have to do before you compare one dating coach to another dating coach is to ask, which of those 5 methods are they recommending to get your next sex partner? Are they recommending strictly attraction? Are they recommending strictly seduction? Are they recommending strictly dishonesty and manipulation? Are they recommending some form of negotiation or transactional sex? Or are they recommending some form of coercion? Or a combination of 2 of those? Like, for example, me. Out of those 5, the main 2, as I pointed out before, that I emphasize is attraction and seduction. More so seduction. But generally, I emphasize attraction and seduction. I don't emphasize dishonesty and manipulation. I don't emphasize transactional sex. And I damn sure don't emphasize coercion. So that's the first thing that's going to separate most dating coaches and pickup artists and other affiliated capacities, is that you got to identify, what are they promoting? What is their process for getting a new and different sex partner? What process are they recommending? Here's where I would categorize myself as an innovator in the manosphere as far as men's dating advice. Here's at least a few areas where I would categorize myself as an innovator, someone who didn't invent the basic principles of connecting with a woman romantically or sexually. Obviously, that was created in biblical times. I mean, just the general overall basic principles of hooking up with a female was created in biblical times. So nobody in the manosphere can say they created the basic principles of hooking up with a woman romantically or sexually, because Men and women were hooking up back in you know, since the beginning of time. But again, like with most industries, there's always certain people who are considered innovators. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Steve Jobs, he was an innovator. Bill Gates was an innovator. In the world of sports, Bill Belichick, Tom Landry, Bill Walsh, Buddy Ryan. Those guys were innovators, man. They took something that already existed and they put their own spin on it to innovate it. Phil Jackson in the game of NBA basketball, with the triangle offense. He was an innovator. I was an innovator when it came to men's dating advice. How so? I'll give you one off the top of my head. Before I made my presence known, most men I knew would always say, man, don't ever talk about sex with a woman in the very first conversation. It'll make you look like you're too horny and this and that, and it'll make you come across as disrespectful, rude, crass, and all that stuff. That's what most guys, the only exception guys would say is if that woman got alcohol in her system. That's the only time when I was saying college that guys would recommend talking about sex with a woman in the very first conversation is if that woman had alcohol in her system. But if a woman was sober, most guys would say don't ever talk about sex with a woman in the very first conversation. I said that's bullshit. Not only did I talk about sex in the very first conversation with women starting with the age of roughly 21, 22, but I would talk about sex within the first 5 minutes of my first conversation with a woman. I had guys back then and even later in the early 2000s that called that dating suicide. They would say, oh, that's dating suicide to talk about sex with a woman in the first 5 minutes of your first five. Man, do you know when I was in my early to mid 20s, do you know the first thing that would come out my mouth when I would approach a lot of women? I would say, I cannot wait to see my dick slide in and out of your mouth. That would literally be like the very first thing I would say. Yeah, man, when I was in my 20s, I was an ultra bold motherfucker. I said a lot of shit that other motherfuckers wouldn't even remotely have the balls to say. I would say stuff like, well, my most classic line, and I mentioned this in my book, Who's Hit Again, probably my most classic opener with women back in the day was I would approach women and simply say, so, when we fucking? that was my number one opening line with a lot of women. I would say, so, when we fucking? Did I get rejected quite a bit from the opening line? Yeah, I did. I did. But here was the benefit. What do you think the benefit was even in those instances where I got rejected? And this is why Mode 1 is so effective. What was the benefit of that, using the opening line like that, even if it resulted in abrupt rejection? I prevented women from engaging in manipulative head games with me. I prevented women from exhibiting the behavior of an attention whore and or a cock teaser. See, that's the beauty of straightforward honesty, man. It immediately closes the door on women who are highly manipulative types. What I refer to now as manipulative time wasters. It immediately closes the door on those types of women. So even when you get rejected, it prevents women from being manipulative time wasters. And speaking of rejection, that's another thing I was different than probably like 99% of people in the manosphere when I came on the scene. Most guys, a lot of pickup artists and dating coaches, they would always give advice that's centered around preventing rejection, delaying rejection, or minimizing the egotistical sting of rejection. Just about everybody who was in the manosphere when I first came along gave advice that centered around preventing rejection, delaying rejection, or minimizing the egotistical sting of rejection. When I came on the scene, I basically told guys, you should embrace rejection. I basically said the quicker and more straightforward a woman rejects you, the better. And I still believe that. I believe abrupt rejection is actually the best type of rejection. I always tell men, if you're going to get rejected, try to get rejected within the first 3 to 5 minutes of your first conversation with a woman. Don't wait to get rejected on the second date or the third date or the fifth date or the 10th date. Try to get rejected within the first 3 to 5 minutes of your first conversation with a woman. Because here's the deal, fellas, and I've mentioned this before. Studies and surveys have proven this to be factual. It don't take women days, weeks, or months to determine if they want to have sex with you. Women know as quickly as the first 30 seconds after they meet you if they want to have sex with you. And at the latest, somewhere between the 10 and 15 minute mark. Somewhere between the 10 and 15 minute mark at the latest. Again, that's not Alan Roger Currie. Studies and surveys have proven that. Matter of fact, there was a comedian, what's his name? Dion Cole. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this comedian named Dion Cole. I think I'm going to go over a half hour. I already see that. But there was a comedian named Dion Cole. He did a comedy bit on Netflix where he talked about the same thing I'm talking about. That was part of his comedy bit. He said that he read this study that showed that women know within the first minute or two whether or not they're going to have sex with a man. So he basically in his own comedic way was promoting Mode 1. Because he went on to say, he said, now that I know that, he basically said, I don't remember his exact words, but essentially he said, what's the point in engaging in trivial small talk with women? He said, women know within the first couple minutes if they're going to give you some pussy or not. So it ain't no point in having no like half-hour conversation with a woman, to try to impress her. He said, you're just wasting your time. Now, again, he put it in a more comedic fashion. But essentially, that's what actually made me watch this special, now that I'm thinking about it, because my brother called me and said, hey, man, there's this comedian named Dion Cole that's essentially promoting Mode 1. And he was. Of course, he didn't mention the exact term, Mode 1, but he was talking about that study. He said, yeah, I read this study that said women know within the first minute or two if they're going to have sex with you. So he said, what's the point of doing small talk with them? He said, now I just go up to women and say, he said, if I see a group of women in a club, I just go up to them and say, which one of y'all going home with me tonight? And see, that's my main basis for Mode 1. I know for a fact that it don't take women hours or days or weeks to determine if they're going to give you some pussy. The only thing women tend to be indecisive about when it comes to sex is in what context they might want to have sex with you in. Like some women might be indecisive about whether they want to engage in long-term sex versus short-term sex, or whether they want to engage in non-monogamous sex with you or monogamous sex with you. So those are things that I would say legitimately might cause a woman to be indecisive, which is where seduction and persuasion comes into play. But as far as just the general idea of decision to have sex with you versus not have sex with you, women know that within minutes. Again, most studies I've read say that women know as quickly as within the first 30 seconds after they meet you, and at the latest they know at somewhere between the 10 to 15 minute mark whether or not they're going to have sex with you or not. So anyway, going back to how I innovated the game, man, I was the first among my close friends and acquaintances, and later in the manosphere, I was the first guy, dating coach, to come around and say, eliminate 95% of your small talk with women. Don't engage in lengthy small talk with women. Get to the point real quick. And again, I had some of my own close friends. They was like, that will never work. That ain't gonna never work. You can't. My old brother, for a while before he saw me in action and saw me, as an eyewitness to my seductions, he didn't believe in Mode 1. He was like, dude, it ain't no way you could get a woman in bed by talking about sex immediately. He was basically like, man, you're going to get slapped. You're going to get cursed out. You're going to have a drink thrown in your face. A lot of my fraternity brothers said that. They said, man, you can't talk to women. You can't meet a woman and in the first 3 to 5 minutes of conversation just start talking about fucking. Dude, you're going to get, at minimum, you're going to get cursed out. But guess what? I did get cursed out. But guess what again? probably 3/4 of the women who cursed me out later on ended up sucking my dick or giving me some pussy. Boom! That's the first thing that changed a lot of my frat brothers' mind when they saw that. Because, see, that's another thing. A lot of dating advice coaches used to say, man, don't ever do anything or say anything that will provoke a negative reaction from a woman. A negative reaction. See, I proved that to be bullshit because I've gotten a lot of women that I fucked in my life initially gave me a negative reaction. I can't tell you how many stories I have along those lines. Matter of fact, that's basically what my archetype is that I refer to as an erotic hypocrite, which is a variation of a wholesome pretender. An erotic hypocrite is a woman that's going to give you a very negative reaction when you let her know that you want to fuck her, and more specifically that you just want to fuck her casually. She's going to give you a very negative reaction. But I don't mean she ain't going to give you no pussy if you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, that don't mean she ain't going to give you no pussy just because she give you a negative reaction. Again, just about every woman I've had casual sex with in my life that was a wholesome pretender or an erotic hypocrite gave me some type of, at minimum, they gave me some type of resistance in the first few minutes of the conversation before I ended up fucking them or they're sucking my dick. And at maximum, they did everything short of just flat out cursing me out. Matter of fact, you know my nickname is the king of verbal seduction. Some women in California gave me that nickname. When I was in Southern California, a woman I actually used to have sex with. Matter of fact, it's the woman you've heard me talk about before. I won't use her real name. I'll call her Sharon. Sharon, if you remember, is the woman that we were fuck buddies, and I actually wanted us to become boyfriend, girlfriend, but she just wanted to remain fuck buddies. Oh, matter of fact, quick side note, if you watch my, I think I'll put the link in the comment section. I did a podcast yesterday, Saturday. I got into the podcast real late. But this guy I mentioned before named Richard Cooper, I call him Coop. He had this group podcast that featured a number of different people, most of them guys that I met at the 21 convention in Orlando, Florida last fall. I was a featured speaker at the 21 convention. But anyway, on this group podcast, a lot of you are familiar with a brother named Donovan Sharp. Me and Donovan Sharp, we had a disagreement. It wasn't a heated disagreement. It was what I would call a respectful disagreement. You can have respectful disagreements. But Donovan Sharp made the comment that, I can't remember the exact words, but it was to the effect of women only have sex. Oh, here we go.
Negro Manosphere article. This is a reminder. Negro Manosphere article.
See how she helps me out? She gives me a reminder I need to write my article for tomorrow for the website, the Negro Manosphere. I'm going to show you how I'm an innovator in the manosphere because I'm on Wikipedia and I'm known nationally and internationally. Alexa, who is Alan Roger Currie?
Alan Roger Currie is an American dating coach, self-help author, motivational speaker, and YouTube personality.
Thank you. Yeah, you don't get a Wikipedia page by just repeating shit that other guys said decades before you and centuries before you. Anyway, me and Donovan Sharp, he basically implied that women only engage in sex when they have emotional feelings for you. Or he said that if a woman, like, I want to say in a nutshell, he basically said that women don't fuck just to be fucking. They gotta have some kind of emotions involved in it. That's not true. And if you watch the podcast, I disagree with him on that. That's not true. Women do fuck just to be fucking. Particularly alpha males. Women do fuck just to be fucking. That is not true that women don't fuck just to be fucking. Yes, they do. Trust me. Women do fuck just to be fucking. See, I did a Patreon exclusive. I'm not going to go into detail. But here's why a lot of men have women who catch feelings when they fuck them. Is because a lot of men blur the lines between treating a woman like a girlfriend and a fuck buddy. See, I don't do that. Matter of fact, I mentioned before that one of my own cousins, I got a cousin in Chicago, he criticized me about that before. He said, Alan, man, my one beef with you is you pretty much treat women like hoes and sluts. You don't treat women like good girls. And I said, I don't totally agree with that. I wouldn't go as far as say I treat all women like hoes and sluts. But if I look at a woman as just a fuck buddy, I treat them like a fuck buddy. I don't treat a woman who's a fuck buddy like a girlfriend. And that's what a lot of manipulative type guys do. And that's what causes a lot of women to catch feelings. Because you trying to treat a fuck buddy like she girlfriend material. I don't do that shit, man. But anyway, what I was going to say about Sharon, again, not her real name. Sharon and her two girlfriends were the first ones who started calling me the king of verbal seduction because they witnessed me talking to women and seeing women like go off on me, like do everything short of cursing me out. But then either a few minutes later, a few hours later, or a few days later, I ended up fucking those same women. So going back to how I took game that already existed and innovated it, here would be some ways I would argue that I was the first major person in the manosphere to emphasize these things. I was the first major person in the manosphere to emphasize the combination of upfront, straightforward honesty combined with smooth, seductive, erotic, dirty talk. Nobody before me was emphasizing that. Nobody before me was emphasizing that. Now, since I came on the scene, there's a lot of people who tried to imitate what I do. But before I came on the scene, nobody was emphasizing the combination of straightforward honesty and smooth, seductive, erotic, dirty talk in the first conversation. Nobody was emphasizing that before me. Nobody was talking about manipulative time wasters. Women who don't want to give you any pussy, but will give you the misleading impression that they will. Nobody was emphasizing that to the degree that I was. Nobody. Nobody was emphasizing using phone sex to get as a form of seduction to get women to have physical sex with you before me. Nobody was emphasizing that. I'm not saying I was the very first person to do it, but in terms of putting a high degree of emphasis on it, nobody was really emphasizing that before me, man. Nobody. And again, if I'm wrong, I invite you and challenge you. Name somebody before, say, the year 2000, or more specifically, 1999. Name somebody before 1999 that was talking about using phone sex as a means of getting women in bed to the degree that I was. Tell me the author's name, the title of their book, and the year it was copyrighted. Don't be talking about Leroy told you something in a basement in 1979. I don't want to hear that shit. Yeah, my Uncle Leroy, he told me about that, in 1979 when we was both in his basement. I don't care about what somebody told you in 1979 in somebody's basement. I'm talking about documented shit. Shit that's documented. Shit that's documented. Anyway, I'm not going to go longer because I don't want this video to be longer than it already is. Bottom line is, for anybody to say the game is the game is the game, that is not true. That is not true. Again, the ultimate objective of the game, if you want to call it the game, is the same, which is to help men find a new and or different sex partner. That's the only commonality between all of the dating advice you're going to receive from other men is it's designed to help you find a new and or different sex partner. But beyond that, everybody's advice is different. Because again, you got some guys who give advice specifically on how to find their future wife. You got some guys who give advice on how to find their next long-term girlfriend. You got some guys who give advice on how to find just a casual sex partner. You got some guys that give advice that centers around honesty, like me. Then you got other guys that give advice that centers around dishonesty and manipulation. You got some guys that give advice on tricking, like Max City Limits. Shout out to Max City Limits. They give a lot of advice on how to be a great trick. Or some people give advice on how to be a sugar daddy. Some people even are bold enough to give advice on how to grope women, which would fall in the category of coercion. I know, I'm not going to say their names, but there were 2 controversial pickup artists that came out with information telling men how to just go up to women and just start groping them. So see, all people's advice is different. Again, number one, most dating coach advice is going to fall into one of these 5 categories: attraction, seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, transactional sex, and coercion. That's the first thing that's going to separate all dating coaches, is which of those categories do they fall in. Again, just about all my advice falls under the category of attraction and seduction, and more emphasis on seduction, and even more specifically, verbal seduction. Verbal seduction. Matter of fact, before I came along, that's another thing. Before I came along in the manosphere, nobody even used the term verbal seduction. I never heard anybody before I came. I would say I came in the manosphere officially around 1999. That's when I would say I made my presence known in what's now known as the manosphere. I came on the scene in 1999. I would say even more so around 2002 when I started posting on this website called AskMan.com. AskMan.com. That was kind of my first, even though message boards aren't technically social media, but I was going to say that was probably my first social media presence in the manosphere. Was I used to post on this website called AskMan.com between roughly 2002 and 2005. That's when people really start gaining knowledge of my ebook, my ebook version of Mode 1. I first wrote that and copyrighted that in 1999. But yeah, I was the first person to start talking about verbal seduction, man. I had guys back then, they used to say, man, Alan, you're crazy. You can't just talk dirty to women in an X-rated manner in your very first conversation. You're going to get slapped. You're going to have a drink thrown in your face. You're going to get cursed out. And now I've been around for what? It's what now, 2018? I'm now, my updated version of Mode 1 was #1 last year in the category of communication skills. #1. Not number 2, not number 3. #1. I got my own Wikipedia page. I've been on national TV. I've been on national radio. I've been featured in magazines and newspapers. I've spoke internationally. Enough said. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'll talk to you later on this week. Peace.
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yes, sir.
Who's the king?
Alan, you're the king.
Say it again.
Alan, you're the king. You're dominating me.
Say it again.
Alan, you're dominating me right now. Mode 1.
Mode 1.
Daddy, can I go, please? You're the king.
Say it again.
Oh, oh, you're the fucking king. Yes. 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 Oh. Oh. Oh.
You're the king, Alan.
AKA the king of verbal seduction. You know, it's the tone of your voice, how seductive your intonations are, the vibrations that you could just reach out over the phone lines and stroke a woman's breast just by the sound of your voice, how you could make her pussy so wet just by the sound of your voice. That's actually very hot.
So you said my show was what?
I said your show is powerful.
Oh, say it again.
Your show is powerful.
I bet the king would fuck me really good.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie.
Oh, yeah. Who's the king?
Alan Roger Currie. The king.
The king.
The king.